Nickelodeon, Lodion, ooh.
Children's television has been a staple across generations of households, with many iconic characters from these shows growing to be icons of media as a whole. Countless children grew up but never forgot the memories they had watching these shows. With the early market of children's TV consisting of PBS and Saturday morning cartoons and serials, in 1979, a small local channel would make a big expansion into the very first national network just for kids, Nickelodeon.
Introducing Nickelodeon. Children's programming that's fit for children. 13 hours of programming a day, 7 days a week, that will make them wonder, laugh, ponder, and think.
To get to the true start of Nickelodeon, we'll need to go back to 1977 in Columbus, Ohio for the Cube television system. This innovation was a two-way multi-programmed cable system that began distribution in Ohio on December 1st of 1977, coming from Warner Communications. The Cube system debuted with 30 different channels. Among them, on C3, would be a whole channel dedicated to a show called Pinwheel. The show and channel, as a result, was completely targeted towards a preschool audience, using live-action cast members as well as puppets to teach lessons, educate, and entertain with its original music, with most written by the human star of the show and first unofficial face of Nickelodeon, George James. He would portray Jake on the show, who interacts with the characters that live in the Pinwheel house, like Aurelia, Ebenezer, Luigi, Plus and Minus, and many others, including other humans like Francie, and especially Coco the Mime. With these being the wraparound segments, the show would feature many acquired shorts for the bulk of the programming. The show would be much in the vein of other children's programming from that time, like Sesame Street and The Electric Company. Actually coming from The Electric Company would be Dr. Vivian Horner, the director of research for that show, who would become the creator of Pinwheel, and the first head of Nickelodeon as it branched off into its own channel in 1979. She worked with other important founders of the channel, such as Sandy Cavanaugh, the first director of programming, Al Parinello, the director of sales and marketing, James Casavini, vice president of program operations, Andrea Severco, who produced By the Way, Bert DeBrow, who produced America Goes Bananas, and Niall Henson, the general manager of overall operations, with the original design of the logo and the name of the channel coming from Joe Lozzi, and the whole push coming from the then executive chairman and CEO of the Warner Communications Company, Gus Hauser, the original founding family of Nickelodeon.
We took everything that was wrong with children's television and got rid of it. We kept everything that was good about it and made it better. The result is Nickelodeon, the young people's satellite network.
Initially scheduled for February, Pinwheel would branch off into its own nationally broadcast channel through Warner Cable, making its premiere on Dr. Horner's birthday. On April 1st, 1979, Nickelodeon made its debut as the first kids network, taking its name from the old 5-cent movie theaters from the early 1900s that would show continuous short-form content and variety programs, fitting the theme of how the channel would be structured during its early years. The marketing for the launch of the channel would also reflect this classic movie feel, having a man peering into the end of the logo, or a kid viewing into a machine much like how people used to look into a kinetoscope. However, this logo would change during the launch of the network, dropping the man and just going with the simple name of Nickelodeon until 1981. The earliest years are often referred to by fans as the vegetable era, since most of the shows were programs that studio executives thought parents would want their kids to watch, rather than what their kids would actually want to watch. The channel would start out as an advertisement-free network, instead having many different interstitial programs throughout the years, with the first segments featuring a mime who would become the unofficial icon for the channel. The mime was played by character actor Jonathan Schwartz, stage name Vinny Verrelli, performing different skits in front of a black background. Mime sort of popped up a lot in the early days with these, The Mime and Pinwheel. In an interview with Vinny conducted by Andy Anderson, he talks about many of the skits that would be performed since most footage of these are lost today. He even refers to the same kind of machine that the kid in the first promo looked into, calling it a mutoscope. There would also be skits with just the mime's hands that were performed by Rita Nachtman, who was also a mime and directed Vinny in the skits. For those interested, I will link the whole interview in the video description. Starting off, Nickelodeon would be on the air from 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. on weekdays and 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. on the weekends. The programming started with the show that held the previous namesake, Pinwheel, which would take up most of the airtime in the day. This would be aired alongside other shows like Video Comic Book, a series that would feature DC comic books in a format that allowed readers at home to follow along, with the production including music scores and voices for the comic characters. Next, America Goes Bananas, based on the smaller local show Columbus Goes Bananas that was also on Cube. This was a show that featured a host in front of a live studio audience talking about teenage interests and problems, with tips for the future and a featured talent segment. Next, Nickel Flicks, one of the completely lost shows from the channel, featured famous cliffhanger serials such as Tom Mix, Flash Gordon, and Rin Tin Tin, being the first show to be cancelled from Nickelodeon, only lasting until December of 1979 due to the complaints of the serials featured having violence in their content. By the Way, originally named Pocket Money before the channel's launch, would feature live action and animated shorts acquired by the network, with the main wraparound segments being a woman named Josie, played by Andy Hellman, as a traveler in the woods. The last shows to be added in 1979 were Children's Classics, another show that would air BBC Classic serials, premiered on December 3rd, featuring serials like The Prince and the Pauper, The Legend of Robin Hood, Heidi, and David Copperfield. And finally, Hocus Focus joined the lineup on December 31st. The show was hosted by a wizard named Crispin, who traveled from the Middle Ages accompanied by his magic talking book and magic pet Ulok to learn about the modern world through short films and a museum that now sits in the place where he once lived. Much like most of the other shows during this time, this show would be a package show, which would acquire existing material like films, serials, or shorts, and create a new framing device using the wraparound segments. After Nickelodeon signed off for the night, the channel would be paired with the Star Channel, which would later become the Movie Channel in December of 1979 and branch off on its own in 1980. In early 1980, First Row Features premiered on January 27th, another package show that would feature made-for-TV movies that mainly came from the UK. This year would see a new head of Nickelodeon take over the direction of the fledgling network, Cy Schneider, coming from a marketing background, with Vivian creating the foundation for what the channel would be. Warner Cable, which became Warner Amex Communications in September of 1979, brought in Cy to help market the channel as a suitable source of entertainment specifically for kids, something that was completely unique to the market at the time. He would continue to steer the channel in the green vegetable direction, aiming to market subscriptions to the parents, and adding many new live-action shows that wouldn't cost a lot to produce and appeal to a teen audience to broaden Nickelodeon's overall market. The first of these shows would be Pop Clips, which premiered on March 31st. The show would actually be the direct predecessor to MTV, which would also come from Warner Amex in 1981. The idea came from one of the members of the Monkees, Michael Nesmith, with the show featuring many different hosts, or VJs, playing different clips from popular music videos at the time. The hosts include Jeff Mikulski, Jack Armstrong, Bill Martin, future Roger Rabbit Charles Fleischer, and even Howie Mandel. The next show that was added would be a big staple for the network, and take over being the main package show for the channel, Special Delivery, which premiered on April 6th. Followed up by What Will They Think of Next on April 7th, an acquired program from Canada that would feature some of the latest innovations to science and technology around the world with host segments and experiments. Next was Dusty's Treehouse, another acquired show which premiered on the channel on June 2nd. Similar to Pinwheel, the show followed Dusty and his puppet friends that live in his treehouse discussing issues aimed at young viewers. The last premiere in 1980 was Livewire, which was added on September 29th. This was an original talk show that featured host Mark Cordray in 1980, who was replaced with Fred Newman in 1981 through the rest of the series in front of an audience of teens. The show would feature guest interviews as well as music acts. '81 would see the first major shift in the channel's branding during April. Right before that, however, a few new shows were added in syndication. Starting on April 5th, Matt and Jenny followed brother and sister as they traversed through the Canadian wilderness in an attempt to find the remaining members of their family after they moved west. Coming from the same creator, Adventures in Rainbow Country followed a similar theme, with a mother raising her two boys and facing the challenges in the wilderness of Ontario. And Studio C was a show that was produced out of South Carolina and shown initially on PBS. This was a show that really enveloped the For Kids by Kids formula, showing interviews, poetry, and looking into the many activities of kids during the time. And finally, on April 6th, the show Vegetable Soup was added. This was another show that featured live action as well as animated segments that would focus on important lessons for kids, with this show mainly focusing on issues of race. On April 12, 1981, the channel would see some big changes, moving into the Silver Ball or Pinball era, and now being broadcast from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. 7 days a week. With a new after-hours channel taking over, the Alpha Repertory Television Service, or ARTS, which focused on showing fine arts like opera, ballet, and orchestral performances. The new logo would get rid of the black and white text and make Nickelodeon stand out in color in front of the icon of the silver ball, choosing the silver ball as a representation of playfulness and innovation to the channel, and having it in many of the new promos and bumpers, and even receiving a song to go along with the rebrand. The first show to be added after the rebranding was Nick's Family Picks, a show that, according to a print ad, would air movies the Nickelodeon deemed good for the whole family, with the show apparently being hosted by favorite Nickelodeon characters. During this year, the channel would air many different acquired shorts for their interstitials going under the name Nickelodeon Short Features. This was followed by Reggie Jackson's World of Sports, which premiered on July 4th. Hosted by the famous baseball star, he would discuss health, exercise, and different sports, and featuring actual sports game footage to discuss the mechanics of the games. The first science fiction show would be added on September 1st with The Tomorrow People, a show from British television. In this show, teens who have developed powers dubbed Homo Novus or Homo Superior work from a secret lab to find new examples of tomorrow people breaking out or developing powers and helping them through the process of the change while trying to keep their abilities a secret due to fear of persecution. The final edition this year was Kids' Rights, which premiered on December 25th. Kids would write in stories to the show where they would be acted out by a dedicated cast in front of a live studio audience. Starting off right at the beginning of 1982, The Adventures of Black Beauty would premiere on January 1st, a show following the Gordon family with the main focus being the daughter Vicky and her horse named Black Beauty. The pair, often accompanied by Vicky's brother, would go on adventures through the countryside in the late 1800s, with Vicky standing up for injustice on both people and animals. Also on January 1st was Spread Your Wings, a show that presented kids all around the world learning and performing different trades, with many being ones passed down through generations. On January 2nd, a major show would be added to the network and be a huge influence for the future direction of the channel. You Can't Do That on Television was a Canadian sketch comedy show with a cast of kids filling out all of the roles and one adult who played many different characters, but mainly Ross, the show's stage director. This show would go on to inspire shows like All That for the channel and introduce the iconic but infamous staple of the network, the green slime.
Well, yeah, it usually is, but I guess it could be red. Or it could be blue. Or yellow. Yeah. Okay, you think you're so smart. Let's see stripes.
The channel even had a contest where the winner flew up to the studio where they filmed the show in Canada, met the cast, and got slimed. During 1982, the channel would add some new interstitial programming, which aired under the title Spotlight Program Break. This included Tip Top with Susie Pruden, a fitness program to give kids a quick exercise, Magic Hands, a magician performing close-up magic tricks with only his hands featured, Nickelodeon Arcade, not the game show that came later, but a segment that presented a small visual puzzle to viewers, going through it and giving the answer at the end so viewers at home could play along. In some sort of segment that had to do with showing different careers. I wasn't able to find much information on this subject, so I would love to hear more about it if you know about it. Continuing the premieres on May 3rd, today's special was added to the channel. This show was aimed at a much younger audience, with Jody, who works in the children's department of a large department store, bringing in a mannequin named Jeff each night. With his magic hat and a few magic words, Jeff comes to life and makes friends around the shop, like Muffy the Mouse and Sam the security guard. The show focused on a single subject each episode, often with short films or cutaway sequences, like the characters on an imaginary adventure. Next was Against the Odds, a history show hosted by Bill Bixby that presented stories of historical figures that persevered through obstacles in their life against the odds, with small cutout type animation and an editing style meant for kids. Finally, the last premiere in 1982 was Stand By, Lights, Camera, Action on October 23rd. This show delved into movie production and culture, hosted by Leonard Nimoy, with many episodes focusing on different aspects of the movie industry, featuring interviews, behind-the-scenes footage, and lots of looks at how practical effects were done.
You probably think Nickelodeon is a channel
for little kids. Well, it is, until the big kids get home.
Then it changes into a channel of rock concerts and interviews, behind-the-scenes movie previews, and some great comedy. So even if you thought Nickelodeon was
For little kids.
that doesn't mean you can't change your mind. Nickelodeon.
Beginning in January again, the first premiere in 1983 was the next science fiction show for the channel, The Third Eye. This was another package show that featured serials from the UK and New Zealand of kids experiencing supernatural events, featuring the stories The Haunting of Cassie Palmer, Under the Mountain, Children of the Stones, Into the Labyrinth, and The Witches of Grinnegog. The channel would see a bit of a change this year, with the introduction of advertisement breaks taking place of most of the interstitial programming, and now the shorts being aired under the title Nickelodeon Breakaways, which lasted until 1984. The channel was looking to expand and wasn't able to do much with the limited funding that they had, so they introduced commercials and started gaining a lot more subscribers to the network and revenue that would pave the way for the changes to come in 1984. Only 2 more shows would be added during November of 1983, with Mr. Wizard's World premiering on the 3rd, a reboot of the show Mr. Wizard, with the host Don Hebert teaching and performing many different science experiments, as well as explaining the science behind many everyday objects, with this show clearly shaping the formula for shows like Bill Nye the Science Guy. And finally, on October 4th, Going Great would be the last new show for 1983. A show that went around the country interviewing different kids that were very successful at what they were pursuing, showing off their talents and careers.
Every day, take off with Nickelodeon. We won't let you down.
Dawning into the next era of Nickelodeon, 1984 would see Cy Schneider hand over the reins to Jerry Laybourne early in the year, a former teacher and television producer. In January, the Cube service would shut down, and on February 1st, the Arts Channel would become Arts and Entertainment, or A&E, and announced during the summer that it would branch off into its own channel in 1985, leaving room for a late-night edition for Nickelodeon. The first show to be added in 1984 was Danger Mouse on June 4th, a show that proved to be a big hit for the channel, and also being the first fully animated show for the network. A British animated series following the titular character as he acts as a spy for the British Secret Service, similar to a parody of the James Bond series. Next, on June 8th, was Nick Rocks Video to Go, a series very similar to Pop Clips, with a host showing a music video countdown voted in by viewers at home. On June 9th, they also added The Saturday Concert, a show that featured live concert events of popular bands. Another premiere in June on the 16th was Belle and Sebastian, an anime based on a French novel for young viewers telling the tale of Sebastian and his big mountain dog Belle, as they try to escape to Spain to save Belle's life from the police after being falsely accused of attacks, and finding Sebastian's long-lost mother. The last show to be added on the network before the big change was Vic's Vacant Lot on July 7th. This is a show from ESPN that featured host and tennis star Vic Braden, showing viewers how to play new games submitted by viewers that take minimal equipment and encourage young viewers to get more active.
When you want pizza and they dish up slop. When you want to go and they say stop. When you want to rock and they play you bark. It's great to know there's one place to go. Nickelodeon.
Go, girl, go!
Nickelodeon. It's what you want.
During the summer of 1984, Jerry Laybourne took the entire Nickelodeon crew of about 20 people and gathered them in a room to decide the new direction for the channel. She would begin to formulate ideas on making the channel less green vegetable and more of things that kids would want that they can't get anywhere else, more orange. The channel would then be reworked. With help from executives of Nick's sister network, MTV, they brought the Silver Ball era to an end and introduced the now iconic orange splat logo on October 1st. Along with the splat, the logo is meant to be a variety of different shapes, always in orange, with a white text that could be utilized in all promotional material for the network. This new look would be paired with a brand new theme performed by the Jive 5.
Nick, 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 Nickelodeon. Nick, 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 Nickelodeon. Aren't you glad you got your Nickelodeon? Aren't you glad you got your Nickelodeon?
You watching Nick? Aren't you glad? You watching Nick?
On the Lord, here a hut, Nick. On the Lord, here a hut, Nick, Nick. On the Ricky Ticky Low, while living #1 Nickelodeon.
All of these changes would be the new foundation of what would become the biggest kids network of all time. Wasting no time, 2 shows were added to the lineup on October 1st. Lassie, following the heroic dog in the 50s TV series, showing multiple seasons from the original show, with different families being featured in each season. and Powerhouse, a show following a group of kids led by Brenda as they go on adventures with many different heavy topics including racism, drugs, drinking, gangs, and crime, with the group centralized out of the Powerhouse Youth Center. These stories were accompanied by short segments, which the show dubbed uncommercials. Finally, the last new show in 1984 was Out of Control, a sketch comedy show that would act as a sort of parody to a news program, with the cast trying to put on the show. Hosted by Dave Coulier and featuring many recurring segments, characters, and themes. Another addition that would come to the channel in 1984 was an interstitial program that aired between shows, Bill Cosby's Picture Pages. This was originally a part of the Captain Kangaroo show and featured Bill Cosby guiding children along solving puzzles through the Picture Pages books that were sold in stores.
Nick, 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 doo-wop, 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 wow, 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 Nick, 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 Nickelodeon.
1985 would see the newly orange channel expand more into some new shows, testing out what will and won't work with the new theme, as well as the beginning of a huge staple for the network. Starting off early, a series of shorts were acquired for the interstitial programming called What the Devil, which starred the titular character, Watt, attempting various tasks. This year also saw the introduction of the top of the hour interstitial, which had an announcer for the channel reporting what the schedule would look like, any events going on, or even stating the specific date. The first show to be added this year was Hanging In on April 1st. The show was a Canadian teen sitcom that featured the main characters of the two counselors at a youth drop-in center, as well as their receptionist, as they help the youth they come across face different issues they deal with. The next show would also be added on April on the 7th, with National Geographic Explorer, a short-lived show on the channel as it would move to WTBS in February of 1986. The show would be made up of existing documentaries, as well as some new explorations and including interviews and celebrity guest segments shot in front of a live studio audience. Following this was Turkey Television, which premiered on June 3rd. This was another sketch comedy series that featured a variety of segments including new skits, acquired segments from older comedy short films or animated shorts, as well as including some stand-up comedy routines. Then, The Adventures of the Little Prince would be added on June 8th. This was another anime that followed the Little Prince, who comes from outer space, where in the English version he travels to different planets by catching comets with his net. In the original, it's just Earth, accompanied by the space bird Swifty, with the prince often visiting Earth and meeting new people during his adventures. On June 23rd, Nickelodeon would become a full 24-hour network, with the regular programming being shown throughout the night until July 1st, where the lineup slot would be taken up by the brand new Nick at Night.
And it's nighttime across the nation. Stay on your favorite station. It's a viewer's delight. Nick, 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 Nick at Night.
This block was created by Jerry Laybourne and her new team that were looking for a programming that would fit into the nighttime slot when they knew that not too many, if any, kids were watching during those hours. So, with the recent success of adding Lassie, and after the acquisition of 200 episodes of The Donna Reed Show, they had the idea of airing classic shows that appealed to the parents under the Nick at Night banner from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. The first new show to be added under Nick at Night was Route 66. Next was Dennis the Menace, the live-action show also from the 60s, with the show featuring the Mitchell family, with Dennis trying to do his best but just making situations worse, often involving his neighbor Mr. Wilson. And finally, The Donna Reed Show would also be added on July 1st, with the original Nick at Night lineup including these three shows, Turkey Television, National Geographic Explorer, and showing a Nick at Night movie every night, typically with the movie being from the 40s or 50s. On November 1st, another show would be added to the Nick at Night lineup with My Three Sons. Two more premieres would also be added during November, with Star Trek, the animated series, being added to the channel on the 9th, a serialized animated series that followed the original crew of the Enterprise. And Banana Man, which would be aired alongside Danger Mouse, was added on November 28th, a British superhero parody show based on the popular comic strip about the schoolboy Eric Wimp, who gained superpowers by eating bananas.
Dear Nickelodeon, I have been irritated with your network for quite some time now.
Dear Nickelodeon, way to go.
Although I do not have or want children of my own,
I really like to watch.
I see no need for
Danger Mouse, Belle and Sebastian, Nick Rock, and you can't do
that on television. And those awful contests. What child really wants?
All the toys I can grab in 5 minutes.
And that silly slogan.
Nick is kid.
Don't you think adults know better?
Many new shows would arrive to the network in 1986, with most fitting into the formula of young children's animation to go along with Belle and Sebastian, The Little Prince, and Star Trek, or going to the Nick at Night block. The channel would also begin a new event during January of 1986, and seemingly running through 1989, where they would show Nick programs all day and night for the weekend, without the Nick at Night block, dubbed Kids Only Weekend. Around this time, they also introduced a new interstitial called Nick's Kid Almanac, which had a mutant host going over specific events or facts that kids might find interesting. And also including some new bumpers with an adult woman who just doesn't understand that Nick is kids. The first 3 shows to be added in 1986 all went to the Nick at Night block, starting with Mr. Ed on March 1st, which also aired on Nickelodeon. This was a sitcom with the main character of Mr. Ed being a talking horse owned by architect Wilbur Post, with Ed mainly only talking to Wilbur. Then jumping to May 1st, the next edition was I Spy, followed shortly after on May 4th with the Smothers Brothers Show. The next 2 shows would both be added on June 30th, with Curious George, an animated series made up of shorts based on the popular children's books, some of which actually aired under Pinwheel in earlier years, and The Mysterious Cities of Gold, an adventure series taking place in the 1530s, following Esteban, Zia, and his navigator Mendoza, who saved him as a baby, with a new crew on the Esperanza as they try to find Esteban's father and the 7 cities of gold in the New World. The next edition this year would be The Monkees, added on September 1st, with it being added to the Nick at Night lineup in July of 1987. This was a musical sitcom that featured the members of the band The Monkees, as their characters try to make a name for themselves in the music industry, with the episodes featuring the music from the band. Around this time, the channel would add another interstitial program with True Stories, Famous People, an interview commercial segment where the name really speaks for itself. On October 4th, another animated series would be added to the lineup, Spartacus and the Sun Beneath the Sea. The series told the story of Arcana, a stone avatar for the members of the Arcadians, brother and sister Matt and Rebecca, and Spartacus, as they travel through space and dimensions with their creature vehicle, Tayrig, and try to save the ancient city of Arcana. Only a few days later, the channel would premiere one of its main staples, going on to have multiple different iterations, but starting off with the original, Double Dare, first aired on October 6th. Nickelodeon's first official game show. The game had 2 competing teams doing physical challenges, answering trivia, as well as an obstacle course for points to win the main cash prize. This show would also introduce the host, Mark Summers, as someone who would go on to be a major presence for the network. The last 2 premieres in 1986 both came on November 1st, starting with Rated K, For Kids, By Kids, a review show that featured 3 teenage hosts, who would give their opinions and ratings on recent movies using an arbitrary rating system, except for the highest rating always being K. And finally, the last premiere for 1986 was Zoo Family, a syndicated Australian series that features the Mitchell family, with the father David being a vet who moves his family into the Royal Melbourne Zoo.
Psst, kids, if these people mean anything to you, you'll keep watching Nickelodeon, and you will watch every day. Or else, this dog may go hungry.
My father!
This man's identity could be unknown forever. These people might scream forever.
Climb up the rope.
These kids may be vibro-vacuumed. Plus, the fire may rage out of control. The planet could be destroyed. They might never get the right answer. Kids, it's up to you. Watch Nickelodeon every day, or else.
Say hey, say hi, say ho. Yeah, yeah, Nickelodeon.
Coming into 1987, the premieres start right at the beginning, with the Ann Southern Show being added to the Nick at Night lineup on January 1st. The next premieres would come during March, starting on the 1st with The Bad News Bears, which would air on Nickelodeon as well as Nick at Night, a series following the baseball team of kids based on the movie of the same name. This premiered alongside Mad Movies with the LA Connection, another show that aired on both blocks of the channel. This was a show presented by the comedy group The LA Connection, where they would present a classic movie with new dubbed-over dialogue performed by the group, very similar to Mystery Science Theater. Then, on March 16th, Nickelodeon added The Sherry Show. This was a show that starred puppeteer Sherry Lewis as an assistant in a TV broadcasting company called Barely Broadcasting, with the whole cast besides Sherry being made up of puppets, all voiced by Sherry herself. Now at the end of March, over the course of 4 Saturdays from the 28th to April 18th, came one of the biggest staples that would come from Nickelodeon, the Big Ballot. What, you don't remember the Big Ballot? The big event that's held every single year? You know, the one where kids vote on their favorite new films, TV shows, music, and sports? Oh, okay. You may recognize it by the name that the event adopted for its second annual show.
Kids' Choice.
Kids' Choice Awards.
Kids' Choice Awards!
Kids' Choice Awards!
Kids' Choice Awards!
Now, there is some conversation about whether the Big Ballot was or wasn't the original Kids' Choice Awards, as it wasn't a live event. Instead, it was spread over 4 episodes and was aired under the show Rated K for Kids by Kids, with it only taking up the second half of the episodes. The event's wraparound segments were hosted by the 3 stars from the show, Matt, Rebecca, and Mark, but this would be the first instance of kids mailing in their votes for their favorite movies, shows, music, and sports, with each category having 3 different subcategories. The award for the Big Ballot would also transfer over to the early years of the KCAs, with it being a golden kaleidoscope, and having featured taped interviewed segments of the celebrities that won the awards. And for the final case for this being the first unofficial KCA, in the future years they go straight on from the second annual KCA, so 1987 would have to be the first. For those curious, here are the winners from that year. Jumping back to the premieres, the next show was Mapletown, which was added on May 18th, a children's anime that mainly focused on Patty Rabbit and her family as they move into the Mapletown, making new friends like Bobby and trying to foil the evil plots of Wild Wolf. Another children's anime would be added not long after on June 1st with The Adventures of the Little Koala, another show that follows an anthropomorphic main character, Roo Bear Koala, and his friends as they go on adventures through Australia. Next, 2 shows were added to Nick at Night on July 1st, Car 54, Where Are You? And Susie, which was also called Private Secretary and stars Ann Southern. Now this next show I couldn't tell through research whether it was aired by itself or under special delivery, Miss Peach of the Kelly School, which first aired on the channel on September 5th, but I found multiple instances of the show airing after the fact as well. This was a children's puppet TV show based on the comic strip series, featuring the teacher Miss Peach and her students in the Kelly School. A couple days later, on September 7th, Kids in Motion premiered, a full exercise routine show designed for kids that would mirror the style of popular workout videos from the 80s. 3 more premieres would be added on October 1st, starting with Sharon, Lois, and Bram's Elephant Show, a show aimed at a much younger audience featuring the musical group traveling to different places and solving issues through original songs. Next was the animated series Inspector Gadget, a show about the cybernetically enhanced, somewhat clumsy police inspector named Gadget, as he, his niece Penny, who does most of the work, and her dog Brain work continuously to stop the plans of the evil Dr. Claw and the Mad Organization. And finally, Nick at Night saw another premiere with Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In. 2 more premieres show up on October 4th, both to Nickelodeon. First, the second iteration of their popular game show, Super Sloppy Double Dare. Even though the show would receive this name change in 1987, with the main new feature being viewers' names being drawn during physical challenges for the chance to win prizes from home, the main show wouldn't change too dramatically until 1989. Second was 16 Cinema, a new banner for movies that would appeal to teens to be aired under, with the children's movies being regulated to special delivery and the adults getting the Nick at Night movie. The last 2 premieres for 1987 both came in November. Nickelodeon would introduce their next new game show with Finders Keepers premiering on November 2nd. A puzzle show that had contestants finding hidden objects in photos, having to figure out what the object is through clues, as well as the main draw of the show, finding objects in a large model house on the main stage. Finally, the last edition would come to Nick at Night with the Golden Age of Television on November 8th.
Due to a slight mix-up, Nickelodeon, the only network for you, announces the following changes to its shows. First, it's Double Dog, followed by Monkey Track, the mysterious cities of Dennis, Gadget the Menace, and you can't do that on Mr. Wizard. Nickelodeon, no matter how you put it together, it's the only network for you.
Bringing us into the last year of the dawning era of Nickelodeon, the next big change would come early in the year on January 4th.
When elephants dance and sing, not now. When Dr. Snuggles invents a new thing, I'll tell you when. When koalas hang 10, wait for your cue. When gnomes rub noses again and again. Okay, now. You know, it's Nick Jr.
Nick Jr. officially launches on January 4th, starting off with the lineup of Pinwheel, Today's Special, Sharon, Lois and Bram's Elephant Show, Mapletown, Belle and Sebastian, The Adventures of the Little Koala, and adding a new premiere, The World of David the Gnome. The next premiere wouldn't come long after on February 1st, with Make Room for Daddy being added to Nick at Night. Then, on February 6th, Count Duckula was added to Nickelodeon. A spin-off of the Danger Mouse series, the show focuses on the most recent incarnation of Count Duckula, who comes from a long-lasting dynasty of counts and now breaks tradition being a vegetarian instead of a normal vampire. The next 2 premieres both came on April 1st, with Dr. Snuggles being added to Nick Jr. and Lancelot Link, Secret Chimp, being added to the Nickelodeon and Nick at Night lineup. This was a parody of the spy genre, with the characters being made up of chimps with dubbed-over voices. The 2 mains, Lancelot Link and Mata Hari, would get their missions through the organization's APE, with the show also featuring intermission segments like Ed Simeon and the Chimpies. On April 18th, the second annual Kids' Choice Awards would be presented and show off the new format of their awards show in all its glory. Now a live event at a big theater hosted by Tony Danza, with co-hosts Brian Robbins, Dan Schneider, and Debbie Gibson, with appearances from many different celebrities, including Nickelodeon's own Mark Summers and Les Lyle from You Can't Do That on Television. And finally, with performances from Debbie Gibson, the Fat Boys, Corey Feldman, and the Jive 5, who are essentially the sound of the channel from this era. I will address when the KCAs are held each year, as well as who hosted them, but if you're interested in a more in-depth video of the Kids' Choice Awards each year, let me know in the comments. The next show to premiere was Don't Just Sit There on July 1st. This was another sketch comedy and talk show, with kids hosting the show, featuring celebrity guests, on-site interviews, as well as having a kid band accompanying on an original set. Now the next premiere, which aired on July 29th, seems to be a very obscure show that was only aired a few times on the channel, with it mainly showing up on Nick at Night. The show in question is Kingpins, which, based on the information I can find, is a game show that featured married couples as contestants in a trivia game that had the players answer questions and knock down bowling pins or go through obstacle courses for each level of the game, with the wager on your last frame for the chance to earn extra points with a magic frame. Following this was another Nick at Night edition, with the Nick at Night Comedy Club premiering on August 26th. The next premiere to Nickelodeon would be Kids Court, first airing on September 3rd. This was a program where kids mailed in their cases, which would be presented by a representative kid in the kids' court, with the trial being determined by an overall opinion of the kids in the audience and measured by the judge-o-meter, who would offer sentences. The next edition was a show that aired on both Nickelodeon and Nick at Night. Looney Tunes, which aired the classic Warner Brothers cartoons, was added on September 11th. A few more editions would fill out the Nick at Night roster, with all of the premieres being added on September 12th. Starting off with the Best of Saturday Night Live, followed by SCTV, another sketch comedy show, and finally, The Patty Duke Show was the last to premiere to Nick at Night in 1988. On October 1st, Nickelodeon would add Heathcliff to their lineup, with it also being shown during the Nick Jr. block, an animated show telling stories of Heathcliff's adventures based on the popular comic strip. Another premiere this year was a spin-off of the popular game show Family Double Dare, which first aired on November 7th on Nick. But this was actually a show that premiered on Fox back on April 9th, with it being syndicated to Nick in 1988. It was still hosted by Mark Summers and now featured teams of families competing against each other in trivia as well as new obstacle courses. The last show to premiere in 1988 went to the Nick Jr. block and was The Noozles. This, however, would not be the last premiere that Nickelodeon would see in 1988, when they released their first ever Nickelodeon movie, first ever Nickelodeon original animated movie, and first ever Nickelodeon original Christmas movie, Christmas in Tattertown, created by Ralph Bakshi, first airing on Nick at Night on December 21st. Well, this brings us to the end of the first era of Nickelodeon, the first kids network. Being such an early developer of the whole concept of a channel just for kids, it makes sense that the network spent a few years finding their true identity and making that shine through a gleaming splat of orange. So many of these shows are forgotten or even just never heard of by most kids that grew up with Nickelodeon through the later years, so if this was the version of the channel that you experienced, please let me know. I would love to hear your experiences watching the channel in such early days. If you are a big fan of Nickelodeon in general, and you've never heard of this guy, I highly recommend checking out Pop Arena's Knickknacks series, where he goes through each show that was featured on Nickelodeon in amazing detail. What were some shows that I talked about that you wish you had watched as a kid? Does anybody prefer the silver ball logo to the orange splat? Is there anything I missed? Let me know. Make sure to like this video if you enjoy it, please subscribe to show your support, and stay tuned for the next video in this series where I will be covering the first era of the Disney Channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.